190 people are now confirmed dead in Malawi after Tropical Storm Freddy ripped through southern Africa for the second time in a month. Terrifying amounts of brown water have cascaded through neighbourhoods, sweeping away homes. Malawi's commercial hub Blantyre has recorded most of the deaths at 158, including 36 in a landslide. The government has declared a state of disaster in 10 southern districts that have been hardest hit by the storm.
Sheer devastation as Malawi, Mozambique and Madagascar were battered by the violent Tropical Storm Freddy. A grim search for victims is underway. The storm may have broken the world record for the longest lasting tropical cyclone in the southern hemisphere.
Named tropical cyclone now for 33 days. Getting lots of questions as to, well, is it a new world record or not? WMO is setting up an expert committee to evaluate this. We won't be pronouncing overnight. It'll take time.
More than 100,000 people were affected when the deadly cyclone swept through southern Mozambique 2 weeks ago. It washed away roads and flooded homes. Scientists say around the world, climate change is making hurricanes wetter, windier and more intense. The persistent rain has also cut the water supply to locals.
In the bigger picture, we are starting to see more frequent tropical cyclones and severe weather for that matter, which is also becoming more intense. So that is what basically climate change is doing, but we cannot link every severe weather event to climate change.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has offered condolences to the countries that have been affected by the deadly storm.
As the government and people of South Africa, we are saddened by the loss of human life, livestock, infrastructure, and property experienced by our sister nations. Our thoughts are with the many families who have lost loved ones in this disaster, and we share the wishes of the people of Malawi, Mozambique, and Madagascar that these extreme weather incidents will subside so that recovery and rebuilding efforts can proceed.
And here in South Africa, are we safe from the tropical storm?
Tropical Cyclone Freddy will not be coming to South Africa. It's way up in just to the north of Mozambique in the Zambezi River Valley, just to the west of Malawi. But if it was 2 weeks ago, that's when we were worried that the storm might come to South Africa, especially Limpopo and Mpumalanga.
The total number of people killed by Storm Freddy in Mozambique, Madagascar and Malawi continue to rise. Officials warn that the flooding has destroyed crops in Mozambique and could increase the risk of waterborne diseases. Kylie Kumalo, SABC News, Johannesburg.
For a little bit more on this, we're now joined on the line by Dailes Judge, who's the Programme Director for Oxfam in Southern Africa. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. This tropical storm has hit Africa twice. Very unusual, but devastating in both accounts.
Yes, indeed, Peter. These are really troubling times for our dear brothers and sisters in Malawi, in Madagascar, in Mozambique, and the rest of Southern Africa, because we really are grappling with urgent humanitarian needs. And would like to thank you for bringing out the space so that we can discuss some of the incredible impacts that need to be attended to in double quick time.
Well, take us through some of those immediate humanitarian needs that you are experiencing.
So we've done an assessment, and we note that millions of people urgently need clean water and sanitation. They need shelter, they need food and other non-food items. And I just took keen interest to look at what other stakeholders are actually, indicating in terms of the assessments. And it does actually align with Oxfam's assessment, especially the information that is coming from the UN, that this is really the longest and strongest tropical storm that we've had The devastation is massive, causing a lot of damage to homes, to schools, health facilities, roads, telecommunications, and other public and private infrastructure. But much more importantly, the loss of lives and livelihoods.
In these kinds of scenarios, waterborne diseases and other health issues come to mind straight away, don't they?
Yes, they do. And we are actually calling this a double tragedy because in Malawi, Mozambique, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, we are battling with cases of cholera. And so we are in a space where we can say we are in a polycrisis, if I can put it that way, because we have not even, survived the pandemics and the disease outbreak in terms of cholera, that we are already looking at excessive flooding from Cyclone Freddy. And what that is doing is that it's heightening the flooding, and the flooding is, causing an increase in the disease burden. And what with the damaged infrastructure around health, but also the inaccessibility of the areas that have been flooded, because all the access routes and roads and bridges have actually been damaged. But also, just people are challenged with what to prioritize. So if you look at Malawi, for example, 4 districts have been affected. Over 190 people appear to be dead. Over 20,000 people are reported to be displaced. And then if you compare that with Mozambique, in dire need as well, with over 171,000 people that are affected. We have reports of deaths. We have about 1,900 houses that have been damaged. So all this put together put a lot of pressure, not just on the disease burden, but also on other aspects of people's lives and livelihoods.
I mean, the figures that are coming through are the known figures of those displaced and sadly those that have lost their lives. I would imagine with access being limited, these numbers could rise.
Absolutely. The numbers are expected to increase as the rescue operations are actually mounted and as we gain more access. And that is why it is important for now to start with saving lives of those that we are able to have access to. Luckily, some people have found their way into settlement or resettlement camps. Others have found their way into safe havens. And as Oxfam, we are calling on cooperating partners, we are calling on the donor community to be able to step in, because we know that government capacity is completely exceeded. And so we as Oxfam are mounting a response that is really going to look at provision of water and sanitation, provision of food and non-food items, support with shelter where we can, but where we think that markets are activated, we want to start already with provision of the cash response so that we can cushion the impact. And as the numbers are increasing, then we should be able to get into a space where we are, increasing on early action as well as more recovery type interventions.
What are the meteorologists telling you about the outlook in terms of this second wave of Freddy? And I guess, what is the situation on the ground as we speak?
Well, they're actually saying that Freddy is much more, destructive, because the wind speed is what is actually causing a lot of damage. And besides the wind speed, we're also experiencing repeated levels of rain. And so we will experience a lot more rainfall coming through in Malawi, particularly, and Mozambique. And that's going to be very, very challenging in terms of the recovery phase. Because at the minute, Malawi, for example, is hit with a lot of mudslides. And with the repeated rains, without the equipment that is needed, to be able to salvage livelihoods and lives, it means that people are going to continually, be in a space of dire need. And we've already seen the first line of defense of the communities going in and trying to provide that life-saving support, sometimes even with just bare hands because they don't have the tools. And so what is coming out from the report indicating that the rains are still with us, that the winds are still with us, is really a cause for concern, because that's going to take us a much longer time for us to be able to mount a response in a way that we are easily accessing the people that are in need.
You might have alluded to this earlier, but how many people do we think have been displaced and are desperate for shelter right now?
So quite a large population. As today, the figures that we are getting being reported is that in Malawi, over 20,000 people have been displaced. In Mozambique, over 171,000 people are affected. And in here, the levels of displacement are massive. And so we think that the numbers are indicative of the crisis at the moment. But as the response unfolds, I think the numbers are bound to get much bigger, much higher. And that's why we're saying that government capacity is exceeded. And that's why we are putting this appeal to cooperating partners to step in and provide that much needed investment in terms of financials and other, capacity support to the response to Cyclone Freddy.
All right, and that's where we'll leave it for today. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Dailes Judge, the Programme Director for Oxfam in Southern Africa.